With that, Ms. Johnson, welcome to Guthrie. Thank you. And if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself and why you're seeking office and why it's a good time to be an Oklahoman.
That might, but I guess I'm wired up.
Yes.
Good evening, Guthrie, Logan County. First want to thank Ms. Deb Mason and Tracy with the Chamber for inviting us this evening. I'm Connie Johnson, and I'm winning to be the next governor of the state of Oklahoma. I am a 33-year veteran of the legislative process. I actually wrote legislation at the Senate starting in 1981 and was hired to be a person who wrote so that the people could understand. So I've long related to the people in terms of communication. I was born in Southeast Oklahoma, in Holdenville, lived in Dustin and Idabel. Born to educators. My parents were teachers. I studied to be an educator. And I went to the public schools. I'm very proud of my public school education. It earned me a full scholarship to the University of Pennsylvania, which made a difference in my life when I learned to write and I learned to survive. I came from a minority neighborhood. I grew up on the east side of Oklahoma City, right up the street from the Capitol, so you don't have to worry about moving expenses when I get ready to move into the mansion. But I grew up in a community predominantly African American, but when I moved there, my next door neighbors were white. And I've grown up in diverse settings all my life. I was the only black person working at the Senate in 1981. But I've always counted it a blessing to be in these spaces at such a time as this, to give back the things that I've been blessed to receive. I graduated from Penn and I taught for a little while. I taught French, and then I realized that something was deathly wrong with education. And I decided to get into public service, into the policy arena, in order to make a difference on children's lives. My parents were educators. My mom taught English, and my dad taught special ed. But it's from that background that I now understand the importance of giving back, and that's our duty. That's the rent we pay for occupying this space. So I'm coming to you this evening because I want to empower Oklahomans to take back our government. I want to empower us with new revenues that will let us do that. And I want to empower us to get accountability on existing revenue streams. Because no matter what the question is, the answer will be the budget. So I look forward to talking to you all. I'm taking questions and answering questions from the audience. It's been a wonderful experience. We've been campaigning since February of 2017. I was the 2014 Democratic nominee to the U.S. Senate. I made history as the first woman and the first person of color. But I've just had a 24 year in the Senate. I was 9 years as a senator, where I introduced game-changing legislation, and I hope some of the questions will be able to allow me to expound on what those issues are that I believe are most impacting us as a people compared to the impact that our policies are now having on private interest, where in fact they are getting more from us than we're getting from them. So thank you so much again for inviting me, and I look forward to sharing more about our campaign and our platform.
Well, I apologize. You probably had these questions 954 times
Yes.
in the last few weeks,
Yes.
so we'll try to go easy and quick for you.
And I'm going to try to make it interesting.
Okay. Outstanding. First off, we'll talk about the budget. It seems like the biggest thing we've been hearing here a lot lately. But what are some of the revenue streams you support and also correcting, and what is any specific programs would you cut, if any?
Sure. Specific legislation, revenue streams that I recommend are pretty well known. I'm the mother of the medical marijuana movement in Oklahoma. Did y'all know that? Mm-hmm. Did you know that? So State Question 788, which is creating all of the excitement about an election this year, I'm the reason that's that way. Had it not been for me having the courage and the audacity to introduce that legislation in 2007, to the total disparagement of my colleagues, Democrat and Republican, of my community, but I knew and I believed that Oklahoma had problems. We have health problems, and now we have revenue problems. So it's amazing that we were advocating for the people's health, and here we are in this moment when we're literally talking about the state's future well-being and income. I would definitely enact State Question 788. Because of my background in it, I'm the only candidate who has the experience to usher that through the policy-making process. It is not a final bill. It is statutory. And that's a very normal process in states where this has happened. So that what we need now is the person who's most qualified, who has studied this the longest, who knows the policy implications of other states and how they've implemented, to be in the leadership role in Oklahoma when we step up. And I believe we're going to pass State Question 788. I believe it is crucial for us to pass 788. We need to bring home 24 families who are medical refugees. We need to use State Question 788 to address the opioid crisis in Oklahoma. That's the irony. And so I will talk to you about State Question 788, but I also support industrial hemp, another form of cannabis. And the fact that right now we have research programs available at academic institutions that we need to really look into, because that's where the money is. Colorado makes 4 times the money off of hemp than it makes off of adult and medical marijuana. And I said adult, it's adult use marijuana. You hear the news talking about recreational. No, we're advocating for adult use for those people 21 years and older, and we're advocating discontinuing locking up people for a simple plant that God made, in some cases for life, at a cost of $24,000 a year compared to $12,000 for education. We're advocating changing that senseless policy on the part of this state because it simply serves as a method to send money to private prisons in order to fill a 98% bed occupancy guarantee. And that's where the problem is. So there are 3 aspects of cannabis policy reform that I support. I think the one that is most relevant today, that is the stepping point for all of us, the starting point, is State Question 788. Children need the medicine. People who have cancer and are wasting away, veterans who are committing suicide at record rates, all of these groups, people with arthritis, glaucoma, all of these groups stand to benefit from a natural plant, an alternative plant, than the pharmaceutical concoctions that are literally killing people's internal organs, their liver, their kidneys. We are destroying people using pharmaceuticals when this plant can actually solve our medical and, again, our economic issues.
And I'll just advance to my medical marijuana. We'll just finish it up real quick. A lot of people are concerned the way it's worded, the way it kind of just frees up everything. And also, do you have any fears that the legislature in a special session would come and maybe go against the will of the people, or what's your thoughts on the legislature?
I do. Just to give you the background history, and I'm an educator, so if I talk too much, it's because I want you to understand. This policy proposal was made 10 years ago. I introduced 4 bills. And the one that got a hearing was voted down, but that's when the advocacy went to the next level. And groups like Oklahomans for Health, Green the Vote, Oklahoma Coalition to End Prohibition, these all came to the table and continued the advocacy. But what they were able to get passed was only a referendum. A referendum requires fewer signatures than a constitutional amendment, an initiative petition. So with that lower threshold, they had some money, they got the signatures. Scott Pruitt fought the state question because of how it's worded. I'm telling you, I wrote the questions for 24 years. The questions are required to be written. They used to be required to be written in 8th grade language, but now they've thrown away that requirement as well. But Scott Pruitt literally messed up the language, tried. The Supreme Court ruled. We now have it on the ballot, and the people will get to vote on it. I believe we're going to pass it. Because it's statutory, though, I am very concerned. I'm very worried that the legislature, not only the legislature, but the person in the governor's seat won't understand how the policy can best work for our state because they have no experience in it. They have not studied every Christmas, Mother's Day, and Easter this policy for the last 10 years like I have. So yes, I'm concerned that not only will the legislature mess with it, I'm afraid that the wrong governor, anybody but me, won't be able to make that policy be as progressive as we need it to be right now. We need people to get health care. We need people, we need money. We need the jobs and the businesses that are coming with this industry. A friend of mine who opened a CBD store on 23rd about 3 months ago, he paid $4,000 in taxes this year. And that's just behind CBD oil in hemp. It's not beyond about medical marijuana. $4,000 on hemp, which has a very low psychoactive value, less than 3% by law. But the CBD oil, cannabidiol, versus the tetrahydrocannabidiol, the THC, which is the psychoactive piece. Real education piece real quickly. The only way the THC becomes psychoactive is when it's heated. So yes, when people put fire to an end of an item and they inhale, so yes, that's how THC works, right? But in its oil form, CBD and THC are the two components, the two major components of cannabis. We discovered the endocannabinoid system in the body in the 90s. We only discovered it. But who would have imagined, because we can't imagine what God can do, that when he created that plant in Genesis 1 and 29, that it would have an application in our bodies that we only found out about 30 years ago. The endocannabinoid system responds uniquely to CBD and THC in ways that do two things for the body. The CBD oil calms people down. It bumps down angst, veterans with PTSD, okay? The THC helps with joint pain, arthritis, fibromyalgia, multiple sclerosis. In combination, and this is why State Question 788 is so important, doctors will be able to prescribe the exact combinations to treat different people's ailments. So when they talk about this being too vague and too recreational, no, this is very respectful of the doctor-patient relationship. And we trust doctors that they will get the training necessary to administer, because they cannot prescribe it because of some federal issues, but to administer this as an alternative source of medicine in Oklahoma. We will be able to grow 6 plants in your backyard. People think, and really that's just a misnomer, you cannot grow medical marijuana outside. You can't. It has to be grown in a controlled environment because of the biology of the plant. There are the males and the females, right? Males actually have balls. They do. And if those males come in contact with the female, you know how the story goes, right? They do it and things happen. Anyway, you have to separate the male plants from the female plants, because the female plant is the superior plant. That's where all the real good stuff is, right? But that's just an education piece that I know my opponents don't know. If you don't even know the basics, how are you going to take us to the reality that we need people to certify the purity of a product? We need people to guard the money for the product. We need banks that can take in the money. We need to create our own state bank like North Dakota does. Because right now you can't deposit medical marijuana related monies into a regular bank account. So I'm concerned, and I believe that as the person who got us to this point, I deserve to be the governor. I deserve to take this state to the moon with the one thing, the alternatives to what we have right now that are working on our behalf. You heard the Corporation Commission members talk about, candidates talk about the air and the sun, the wind. It's not going anywhere. These are renewable resources. They are abundant resources that have always been here. that are not going anywhere. Fossil fuel is anticipated will dry up in about 2030. Hempcrete is the strongest fabric known to man. Hempcrete can build houses that are UV resistant, that are cool in the summer and warm in the winter. Hempcrete producers are waiting. They cannot wait to come to Oklahoma and teach us how to build economically and environmentally friendly facilities. So those are some of the ideas that we want to talk to you about how we get the money from what's in the ground and the renewable resources, and how we must protect those resources by electing the people who have the background, but who also have the vision and the compassion for the citizens of this state.
I would debate you on the male versus female, but you embarrassed me.
I know, well.
I don't even try.
Then we would have to talk about the spilled semen amendment, so that's women's reproductive rights. Yes.
Well, we don't want to keep you all night, but I do want to talk a little bit of education about you. And I think I've listened enough to you about, I think you're going to give us a lot of local control answers here. But if you can talk about the education, the walkout, Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite, vouchers, charter schools, just your thoughts on education.
All that in there.
Yeah.
Good. So I'm a public school brat. I resent that we take money from public schools and give it to charter schools, especially because public schools are constitutionally mandated to do what they do. Charter schools are not. There are different standards and rules for the teachers, for the workday, whereas over here, because public schools have been systematically defunded in the present scheme of prioritizing the special interests of oil and gas specifically, and the lack of accountability in other funding streams, our public school systems have been dumbed down on purpose. And as a result of that, our people have been placed in greater jeopardy in going into that system that it's really all about, private prisons. I was at the teacher strike. I wasn't there campaigning. I was there as a teacher. I was there as a parent and a grandparent. My granddaughter went with me, and I said, "Why are you going?" Because my teacher says we need some new desks. Her teacher didn't say she needed more money. She said, "We need new desks. We need new books." So I was there. I stood with the teachers. I met a lot of good teachers. My mom is the teacher of my year. She's the wind beneath my wings. But education is important to my family. Education is important to Oklahoma. Every Oklahoman knows and believes that it is the key to the future for our children. It's really not about us anymore. We're concerned that our children won't have the same educational opportunities that we had, number one, because of the ridiculous cost of education. So I support free junior college education. I'm a progressive. I support local control. Now that's a little strange, isn't it? But when the city of Seminole decided that they didn't want charter schools, and the state of Oklahoma decided that they would get charter schools anyway, and this was a Republican legislature, something's a little out of whack about that picture. When the state of Oklahoma decided that towns and communities could not raise the minimum wage beyond what the state had, local control went out the door. I believe that with local control, we empower school districts, because there are like some 500-something school districts here, all of them with an administrator, and on average they make $185,000 a year. But local control says that school districts can come together and talk about whether they want to blend together, so that instead of paying 2 administrators, they can have AP courses, they can have music and arts and other types of things that they can come together and create. That's the type of local control that I support, because I think communities are best suited to decide what education looks like in their communities. Sure, the state plays a role. House Bill 1017 mandated some very necessary pieces like class sizes, and the day we threw those out the window was the day we committed to locking up children and putting them in the prison pipeline. That may be a leap for a lot of people, but in my community, where 87% of the kids in my old alma mater have one or more parent who's been in prison. It's a different world to teach to. So even inside education, kids are now dealing with things we never dealt with. You know, the reality that potentially your mother went to prison, was arrested last night, and the law enforcement didn't know that you all were in the house with 3 other kids in the background, but you as the oldest kid had to get up the next day and make sure everybody got to school, and then get to school and be taught, expected to act like a child. Whereas when the meltdown came, previously we had behavioral health counselors. I have a rehab master's in counseling. We had behavioral health counselors in the schools to help calm children down and keep them in school, because that's where they need to be, right? Most kids who were badasses wanted to get out of school, didn't they? And guess what? We accommodated them. No, we need our kids to stay in school. We need to give them the wraparound services they need in order to be successful. We need to feed them. Kids that are hungry can't learn. Kids that are not healthy can't learn. So our schools become a wraparound system that takes care of children inside and outside of the school day. I know I've gone off a lot, but that's education. There is so much that I believe can be done better in education when you have people who have education backgrounds making the decisions.
My goal was to have everyone out here by 7:45. I have failed. But if we can give you a few more minutes to address your final thoughts on what Oklahomans need to do on Tuesday to put a check mark next to your name.
Sure, and I want to be really, really tight with the time, so I'm going to just look at my notes. Mind you, I've been doing this for 35 years, and there's not a policy you can bring up that I haven't touched. That's just the truth. So I kind of get off in the weeds and the rabbit holes on stuff because it's just so much, and I love my work. So let me just really quickly say, the problems that I believe are facing Oklahoma, number one, are corruption and the lack of accountability. There's no transparency. They enter into contracts and we can't even find out as the public how much they cost. You have people in elected offices sitting, turning their heads the other way, while situations like are going on in Bokoshi right now, where the ash pit is so high, it's uncovered. They're now mixing fracking water with it. And yes, Attorney General Scott Pruitt sat there while the company having fun, making money, did what it did to the citizens of Bokoshi, Oklahoma. This same guy is now in EPA granting a disposal contract to the state of Oklahoma and bragging like that's a good thing for fly ash. So environmentally, there's a lot of corruption. Nursing home care. We've had attorney generals sit and look the other way while millions of dollars in money intended for nursing home care for Oklahomans are being put out of state, purchasing businesses that have nothing to do with nursing home care. And our attorney generals look the other way. Look it up. The other areas are trauma. This is a traumatized state. Since the Dust Bowl, since the land run, since they stole the seal from Guthrie and took it to Oklahoma City. Trauma. I want us to see us have trauma-informed cities like Ardmore, where when the policeman pulls up, he doesn't just get up and jack somebody up. He says, what's happening? What's going on? When somebody can't pay their electric bill and they go into the city and they say, I can't, well, what happened? They want to know what happened so that we can help people, not penalize. Nobody wins, right? So I want to see trauma-informed care. I want to expand Medicaid. First thing off the bat, I was talking to a classmate today. I've known him since we were in the 7th grade, pediatrician. He had to go out of business because of our refusal to expand Medicaid. So this is an African-American male pediatrician who was all of my kids' doctor, is now out of business. We are losing the institutional knowledge behind the policies that are being made. That's health care. The mental health care, the trauma-informed cities, the environmental. Let's just get rid of private prison contracts. Those are the private contracts. Those are the issues, the problem areas for me. For me, the solutions lie in new revenue streams that can come from cannabis policy reform and holding existing funding streams accountable, as well as looking at new sources and ways to access alternative energy like the sun and the wind. And I really appreciated Ashley for expounding on the wind contracts in Oklahoma. That is crazy. That's crazy. And the solar, and that's because oil and gas is at the helm making all the decisions that disparately impact these industries in ways that support them. So we have to equalize the playing field around energy sources in Oklahoma. The amount of money that can come from hemp alone is enough to turn this state around. The gross production tax is insufficient to do it. We're operating at a budget that is 15% less than what it was in 2007, with 165,000 more people. I think when I heard somebody coming in, they were saying, when I was coming in, they said, how does a household do that? All of a sudden you get 10 more kids and you lost your job. It just doesn't work. So new revenue streams, taking advantage of our existing renewable, replenishable, and plentiful resources, holding existing funding streams accountable in order to fund education, healthcare, all the vital services that make for the best outcomes for the people of the great state of Oklahoma. ConnieForGovernor.com is our webpage. We're going to have another webinar on Monday night at 7 o'clock on our Facebook Live page, Connie Johnson for Oklahoma, because this state question 788 is a big deal. And there's so much misinformation. Just because someone has on a white jacket does not make them an expert. The white jackets that have been rolled out, marched out in these commercials the last week, and all of these people trying to speak from authority, those are simply paid advertisements. That is not news. To the extent that I've never been brought to the table to give the background on just the policy, lets you know that this is not a true and honest presentation about State Question 788. So join us Monday, 7 p.m. on Facebook Live, Connie Johnson for Oklahoma. But also go to our webpage, and there you will see what all good Democrats have. Volunteer. We need volunteers these last 3 days. Donate. We need money. All the money we need is in this room. And those of you who signed up to vote by mail, be sure and turn your ballot in or vote early. We're a small grassroots campaign. We are depending on you to ask at least 20 other people to vote. This is going to be a record off-year election for a primary in the state of Oklahoma. Governor Fallon probably did the best thing she ever did for me in life by putting this question on the primary ballot. I'm asking for your vote for State Question 788, and I'm asking for your vote for the person who is winning to be governor of the state of Oklahoma, Connie Johnson. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Johnson. I appreciate you coming down. And thank you all for coming. Jim Smith is a great volunteer, great community leader in our town, and he says that a good citizen is an informed citizen. So you're to be commended for giving up your evening and being here tonight. If you missed any of our other forums, we had a forum here last week on 788. You can see it on GuthrieChamber.com. You can see it on the news page. You can also see it on the city's page. So thank you again for coming, and we appreciate you. Thank you.